online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft. Marcos Charles, we talked to him last week, Acting Executive Associate Director of Enforcement and Removal Operations for ICE, said Operation Midway Blitz here in Chicago has resulted in 550 arrests as of Thursday of last week. 50 to 60% of the arrests were targeted arrests in which ICE had been searching for that specific person that was arrested. The other arrests were collateral arrests where ICE came upon the people during their operations, but were not specifically searching for them already. We're going to be conducting this operation until we feel that we've been successful. There's not an end date in sight, he said, as he told us the same. Oh, and by the way, the 50, 60% of the arrests, and then the other arrests are those that were targeted versus the others that they came upon during their operations. Those operations that are happening at the neighborhood community level are happening as a direct result of the status of Illinois as a sanctuary state. You won't cooperate with ICE to handle their business in county jails, in courthouses, so they have to go into neighborhoods to find the people that are on their list. And then they come upon others because, of course, Illinois is a sanctuary state. And so we have imported hundreds of thousands of people just over the last 4 years to Illinois with the help of Greg Abbott, but welcomed because we're a welcoming city and state, don't you know? And so, again, the consequences of the policies that the political establishment in this state has advanced, now they decry. They don't like consequences for their actions. Well, we know this. And for their good work, talking about ICE here, operating out of their facility in Broadview, we get this. Broadview officials demand the Department of Homeland Security take down fence surrounding ICE facility. They put up a fence around their facility because they have protesters out there committing crimes. And I'm not talking about their profane language. I'm talking about blocking the entrance and exit of federal law enforcement officials. I'm talking about vandalizing government property, pounding on ICE vehicles. I'm talking about getting up into the face of ICE officers and assaulting them. Some had to be taken down, in terms of into custody. And then otherwise you saw tear gas deployed and so forth. So these are not peaceful protests. And yet the local community here, Broadview, the mayor, Katina Thompson, framed the presence of the ICE facility as a very scary time. Right. That's what's scary to politicians here and in so many other locales, and certainly leftist politicians across the country. ICE is scary. The people that prey on other people, including other migrants who are otherwise peaceful, not scary. This Guatemalan in Seattle, he's not the problem. ICE in Seattle is the problem, right?
A 29-year-old man who ICE officials say was living in the country illegally is accused in a gruesome crime. He's charged with killing his girlfriend and her friend in their home in Burien. ICE has now filed a criminal detainer with King County.
The suspect is Marvin Ortiz Montesinos, who is behind bars. He also has a wife and kids back in Guatemala. As of today, Ortiz Montesinos is being held on a $10 million bail. Fox 13's AJ Janival shows us how family members of one of the victims are hoping the community can help with their funeral plans.
Investigators report after Victoria Aparicio Cruz broke up with 29-year-old Marvin Ortiz Montesinos, he went and brutally murdered her inside of their shared home, stabbing her more than 20 times, then killing her friend and their roommate, Janeth Gomez Hernandez, a mother of a 10-year-old boy. Investigators said Ortiz Montesinos stabbed her more than 40 times.
Here locally, 13-year-old girl reported missing in New York was found in a Chicago suburb, according to U.S. Marshals. Girl reported missing in Rochester, New York, was found in an apartment complex in Blue Island with an 18-year-old man and his father. ICE said both of those men were in the country illegally. There was another minor girl in the apartment. I don't know all the specifics whether she was reported missing, but we know she wasn't related to the family. And this is another part of the operation that goes under discussed, which is all those unaccompanied minors that disappeared into the country that now ICE and U.S. Marshals and HHS are trying to identify, recover, and ensure that at minimum they are not with a sponsor who is a predator. The numbers last week, 400 arrests made of so-called sponsors who were fraudulent sponsors, and 27 of the tens of thousands of unaccompanied minors that the Trump administration is trying to track down, dead. For more on this, particularly in light of what happened in Dallas last night and what Ted Cruz, among others, had to say about it.
This is the third shooting in Texas directed at ICE or CBP. This must stop. To every politician who is using rhetoric demonizing ICE and demonizing CBP, stop. To every politician demanding that ICE agents be doxxed and calling for people to go after their families, stop. This has very real consequences. Look, in America, we disagree. That's fine. That's the democratic process. But your political opponents are not Nazis.
Josh Schirard is the director of law enforcement and private security at Byrna Technologies. He's a former Galveston, Texas police captain and SWAT commander. Joins us now. Josh, thanks so much for being with us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Dan, thanks for having me.
What's your reaction to, what happened yesterday, of course, combined with what you've heard from Ted Cruz and the vice president and others about the demonization of federal law enforcement officers?
We've been seeing, kind of this trend over the last several years, really over the last 5 to 10 years with law enforcement, where it's been more socially acceptable to demonize those officers and to really just, take a furtive action against the law enforcement officers throughout the country. And now here in the last year, especially in the last 6 months, now we're starting to see not only the social acceptance of protests and just outright, just hatred against law enforcement officers, but the attack on law enforcement officers. And unfortunately, this rhetoric is being driven by several organizations out there that are, all but condoning these actions now. And now that we're seeing it escalate over the last several months, and we're seeing very similar kind of modus operandi, a very similar MO in a lot of these attacks, it begs the question of where is a lot of this coming from as far as, kind of this playbook of how to attack law enforcement. And is it coming from, very centralized places that we can track back to? And, we have to ask the question of how do we start to get to the root of where a lot of this more focused narrative is coming from, rather than just this vague, condoning of standing up and attacking law enforcement. Is there a more centralized voice that's directing these actions?
Yeah, I mean, of course, what we know about the shooter who took himself out after he murdered a detainee, ostensibly accidentally. Ostensibly, he was targeting law enforcement per, the anti-ICE scrawled on bullet casings that was recovered. Injured 2 others, no law enforcement. But we know that again, there's some indicia. It doesn't mean this is the source, but he had a gaming profile which indicated some leftist beliefs. J.D. Vance said yesterday there's information or evidence that we have that has not been made public yet that indicates more leftist beliefs. His mom is a leftist. His sister is a leftist. So, I mean, it's one of those things where you have a lot of different avenues you can travel and you don't know, though, if it really can you can generate a profile that you can then sort of apply in other circumstances as some sort of, assessment of a particular person or even a particular organization. I mean, that's the complication, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But when we start to, we look at the Charlie Kirk assassination, and I think we're seeing a lot of ties from that, a lot of, kind of callbacks to that, and even back, obviously to the Luigi Mangione shooting as well with this. But we start to dig into, like you said, these gaming profiles, these boards, these forums, these Discord servers, and we start to see how big this network spreads. And then you have to start asking the question is this just a network of supporters, of people that, are condoning this kind of action, or are we looking at, people that are supplying, materialistic support and assistance to committing some of these actual crimes? And that's where we really start to say, hey, what kind of criminal action can be taken against some of these other people that may not have pulled the trigger, literally, but helped pull the trigger proverbially by providing, some of this support.
Well, I mean, one example too. I mean, we talked about this with respect to anti-Semitism and violence against Jews in this country. College campuses. I don't know if you saw this. There was a flyer that was identified on the campus of Georgetown University that led with this: "Hey, fascist, catch! The only political group that celebrates when Nazis die." And it was for the John Brown Club at Georgetown University. "Hey, fascist, catch!" was, of course, the message scrawled on the bullet that killed Charlie Kirk. And the only political group that celebrates when Nazis die. So this is sort of like, Antifa-esque. They say they're anti-fascist, they're fascist. These John Brown gun clubs. John Brown was an abolitionist, and these people are oppressors, clearly. So, the ironies abound, but that's not the point. The point is, is there something behind these John Brown clubs or other clubs, which is, to your point, like we saw with Students for Justice in Palestine, or we see for Students for Justice in Palestine at college campuses, where there's like real funding behind them, and there's a purposeful deployment of these organizations on college campuses to spread the effort to build the infrastructure.
When we look at the ability to persuade young adults in a very, very quick manner, it seems that these organizations, college-based organizations, are being very successful at doing that. I mean, we look at the Charlie Kirk shooter, and who seemingly came from a very good, home with good values, good morals, good virtues. His parents were public servants. We would assume that he had a fairly decent upbringing, but then in a very short period of time after leaving home, he is influenced to the degree that he is an extremist, to the degree where he's actually going out and killing somebody. So that's where we have to look: is who is able to have that much power and wield that much influence over somebody's life. And it looks like that these college organizations that are impacting these kids in a very influential time in their life are able to just absolutely radicalize their ideals and their belief system enough to actually go out and kill people. And it's interesting, these John Brown clubs, as an abolitionist, John Brown seemed to be fighting the good fight, but he was also one of the first people back in the Civil War to use very violent guerrilla tactics.
Yeah, Harper's Ferry.
Exactly, in order to achieve his overall mission. So it's that and we're seeing that same kind of ideological justification for the very similar violent guerrilla tactics to achieve a mission. Yeah,
I mean, these know-nothings at Georgetown and elsewhere, they may want to read the rest of the story to understand that John Brown was executed for treason. So it didn't, his use of violence to achieve political ends didn't go very well for him, and it won't go very well for them either. But it is sort of it seems like this is almost sort of a madness of crowds thing. It's presented as one-off radicalizations, but when you get into, they're part of these gaming communities, these other sort of affective communities, the furry thing with the Charlie Kirk assassination. It actually is, they are part of self-reinforcing echo chambers. They're not alone, in point of fact.
Correct. Absolutely. And this is where, and look, this type of radicalization, this type of influence goes back, decades and decades and centuries, where, you put someone who seems marginalized into a group where they can find, common commonalities exactly between people. And now they feel like they're part of a group. Now, where the direction that group goes, they're willing to go with it because of the fact that they finally feel like they're not being marginalized as an individual and that they are part of a larger culture. So, and that's where these radical groups, these extremists, understand that they can kind of convert somebody that seems, fairly moderate into something much more extreme and much more radical.
In your time as a police officer, police captain in Galveston, did you have the occasion to work with ICE?
All the time. Absolutely. I mean, Galveston is actually not as far from, for your northerners, is not as far from the Texas border as some might think. So, and right there close to Houston, which Houston's one of the largest kind of, illegal immigration kind of jumping off points. So if they can get them to Houston, then it's very easy to get throughout the United States. So we were dealing a lot with working with the Department of Homeland Security, working with ICE and CBP in order to assist them and them assist us when we would have immigration issues as well, which we did a lot.
Yeah. So, I mean, since we're here in Illinois in a sanctuary state where local police are not allowed to work constructively with federal immigration enforcement, how important was that from your perspective going in both directions in terms of assisting you with your domestic policing responsibilities and assisting them from their perspective with, their charge as federal law enforcement? I mean, was it, the working together, was it a real force multiplier with respect to both of the different police agencies doing their jobs?
I can tell you that not with just immigration, and especially now, but not with just immigration, that the ability for law enforcement entities throughout the country to be able to work together, share information, share resources, share assets is the only thing that keeps us safe at the end of the night. There is no way for a police department on its own, or a law enforcement agency, or a federal law enforcement agency on its own to secure this country, to secure a state, to secure a community, carte blanche. It's just not going to happen. You have to be able to share that information. You have to be able to rely on each other's powers and resources in order to get things done, in order to secure that community. And immigration is no different. There's no way that a police department can keep a city safe, that a municipal police department can keep a city safe if it doesn't have the ability to bring in some of these federal assets to say, hey, look, I need, I have this continual issue here. I can only do so much as a municipal police department, as a state prosecutory agency. What other options do we have to remove this problem? And then vice versa. It goes both ways. So there's no way that siloing these law enforcement organizations is going to keep these communities safe. It's the ability to share that information, share those resources, work together, and make this network of law enforcement. That's what keeps the community safe and the state safe, the country safe, and so on and so forth.
Josh Schirard is Director of Law Enforcement and Private Security at Byrna Technologies, former Galveston, Texas police captain and SWAT commander. Josh, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And Josh joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper, hear it here first. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Sean Thompson here, and I'm with attorney Bert Hochberg from the law firm of Schiller, Ducanto, and Fleck. We're talking about divorce arbitration. This is not really a new